Hi, good afternoon, good day, good morning, wherever you are. And yes, this is AJ, but this time AJ is not wearing the KETRON hat. This time it's AJ as an arranger, keyboard player, as an engineer. And we're going to talk to you today about enhancing your existing arranger keyboard, be that the recent YAMAHA Genos 2, be that a KORG PA5X, or even a KETRON Event. In the case of an arranger keyboard, as you all know out there, a lot of people ask the questions, which is the best arranger? Which is the best arranger? And the arrangers are asking you the question, what am I going to be used for, right? That's going to answer or determine what arranger is best, what arranger best suits your particular needs in question. But there are ways for you to actually enhance your existing arranger. And I'm going to do a little bit of talking today to explain certain things so you can understand exactly what the essence of this video is when we talk about enhancing your arranger keyboard. An arranger keyboard predominantly is used to produce existing music. And that's why a lot of times when you purchase an arranger, you're looking for more and more styles. And what the companies do is every time they have a new arranger, they give you more and more styles. For the most part, if you want to create something new or fresh, most people are going to be looking at a workstation or a synthesizer keyboard to do that kind of job. So the arranger, the strength or the guts of the arranger lies in the styles and the capability to be able to reproduce patterns that can follow you in real time. In addition to that, you also would rely very, very heavily on your voicing. How good does the machine sound? Now, when it comes to features, each arranger has its own edge and benefits when it comes to the features. So I'm not going to really focus on that. I'm going to focus on what's the exciting element. What makes an arranger exciting? What makes you want to go out there and buy or grab an arranger? And that's the best way that you can actually determine what is best for you and which arranger excels or exceeds in one way versus another. I want to talk about today, we're going to start off with the just released YAMAHA Genos 2, which is a great arranger keyboard. What are the great things about the Genos 2? What makes it sound so good in terms of the arranger world? Personally, I have had this keyboard thanks to our good old friend at Audio Pro over in Connecticut, Frank. Most of you know Frank out there. He's one of the best arranger product specialists that you would have here in the United States. We have other folks like Jay Fox as well. We also have people like Larry Reed. But Frank is one of those who has a little bit of everything, right? You go to Frank to visit him in Connecticut, he has the KETRON, he has the KORG, he has the arranger, and he's been dealing with these companies for many, many, many years. So thanks to you, Frank, for having us have a hand on the actual Genos 2 itself. Now, having spent a couple of days with this Genos 2, I've again been able to understand what it is that makes you drawn into having to want to play a Genos 2. And just as I can say from my experience of what it is that draws you into want to using a KETRON keyboard. And I think in this video, from my perspective as again a keyboard player and as a musician and an engineer as well, I can see now where those strengths are and how they can benefit you. So now, starting off with the Genos 2. What can I say about the Genos 2? Though the strength of the Genos 2 lies in the sound. The Yamaha has done an excellent job in terms of trying to reproduce the actual instruments that you hear when you play a Genos 2. So I'm going to turn down the volume here on the event and to explain this in more detail. If I come over here to my Genos 2, I have a sound, for example, I'm using in this the pedal steel guitar, all right? Now, in most cases, we always talk about samples. And when we talk about samples, it's a recording of an instrument. What the Genos 2 presents to you is a lot more than just the recording of an instrument. It also presents to you the articulation or the environment in which the instrument performs in as well is also captured. But not just that. When you play a sound like this pedal steel, what it's doing is that there are certain things, there are certain nuances that are associated with that particular instrument, which are captured and reproduced in real time. So as you're performing, you will notice that in certain aspects, in certain instruments like woodwinds, like guitars, you're going to hear the instrument playing certain parts of the instrument, like nuances or body noises or bends, automatically based on what keys you play and what chords you play, right? And so every time you play something, sometimes the repetition is taken out because you don't know what to expect. And that's what gets a musician excited about the Genos, is that you can sit on the Genos and you can play certain parts or certain arrangements. And each time you play something, it's always sounding different or it's always sounding better because of the articulation. There is some sort of algorithm in the keyboard that actually makes you want to play. In other words, you want to play sounds, right? You want to play voices. That's where the strength of the Genos, if you were to ask me, comes into play. So when you play, for example, this guitar, or if I go in here and if I just pick, let's say, let's go in my favorites here. I want to pick this classic nylon open here. Let me change the screen so you can see what I'm talking about, all right? So let's go to that Genos screen. So if I play this guitar, right, when I'm here, okay? So let me try and explain, because this is sometimes difficult to fathom. So there's a couple of things that are happening here. There are certain characteristics of sounds like bends or body sound or body noise or even atmospheric noise, which is heard based on a lot of things. So for an example, how long or how short do you hold a note down, right? And when you hold the note down, how many seconds do you hold that note down before you engage the next one, okay? Because if you notice, for example, if I did this in 1 second, no difference, right? If I did it in 2 seconds or more, you get a bend. If I do it by itself, nothing. If I do it hard, nothing, okay? So you see, each time I'm doing, I just did two things over there. I did this, no action. Next time you got a bend. Now, why am I showing you all of this? Because when you're playing, let's go to the keys, for example. If I do this, there's a bend. If I do it in less time, there's no bend. If I do it harder, you get the bend sound, okay? So each time as a musician, because it's changing, it's almost like every time you play a note based on how you're playing, something is being introduced into the music. And as a musician, what makes music exciting and interesting is that it is moving. It's not repetitive. It's not a loop. And that, in my experience right there, is what makes the Genos 2 stand out. Because when it comes to the right-hand voices, when it comes to the lead voices, when it comes to the solo instruments, Yamaha has taken a lot of time to be able to make the instrument breathe, to make the instrument talk, if that makes any sense. And so when you're playing it, you're excited. You can actually spend hours, like some of our comrades have done, just playing this and be like, oh, I just discovered something new. Oh, this is interesting. This is nice. You know, and this is true for many, many, many of the voices, especially the acoustic voices in the environment. Now, just to remind you, when you sample an instrument, most machines, of course, what's a sample? It's a recording of an instrument for a certain length of time, right? And when you press the key down, it turns that sample on or off. Now, there are various ways in which you can reproduce music when you're using samples. You can use multiple samples, like you can have 2 or 3 or 4 layers of sampling, where if you press the key with a particular velocity, it triggers a particular sample. If you press it a little bit harder, it triggers another sample, right? Which is also used when you're talking about drums. In this case, it's a lot more than that. It's not just that. That's happening as well too, but it's also kind of predicting when you play a note, what's the next note you're going to. And when you go to that next note, how long before you go to that note? How hard did you press the keys before? All this is being calculated and used to generate the sound that you hear in these examples, right? So for me, that's what would make me want to sit on this machine to play it for hours, because the music is moving when it comes to the lead voices. When you're talking about other arranger keyboards, there is less movement in sound on the right hand side, and so it's a lot more easier for you to get bored or turned away or accustomed to that particular sound. Okay, so this is for me the number one strength of the Genos in terms of that aspect. Now, of course, the other aspect is it's very, very easy to use. It has a very, very well laid out operating system. The panel itself is just, I mean, you don't really have to go through a manual to start playing this out of the box. And that's the one thing that I think Yamaha have been able to capitalize on, and to be able to really, really keep as simple as possible. Now, of course, when you start going into more depth, like, you know, you're going to menus and setting up channels and trying to record your own styles, that's a whole different discussion for a different day. But just out of the box, ease of use, it's a very, very well laid out instrument. Now, having said that, what would I think, or what would I consider as the weakness of the Genos? For me personally, it will be now in the style environment, right? Because the styles are either 8 bars, some of them might be 16 bars, but there is no movement in the style part. And so what happens is you have a machine that has a plethora of styles. Okay, we're talking about 800 or so styles. And that's a good thing, because now that also means what? It means you have more styles to use for your music. So when you have an arranger that has a limited number of styles, you find yourself using one style to play 3, 4, or 5 songs. And that might not be a bad thing if you're doing like medleys, for an example. But in this case, you have a plethora of styles to choose from, yes. But the styles, after a while, you quickly start to feel like you are playing an arranger, because the styles do not move as the right hand is moving. And when I say move, I want you to understand what I'm saying, really. There's movement in the music. What makes a human being move? Drum and bass, the way it hits you. That's what makes you want to dance and want to move around. When you're playing on this, it's more repetitive. So this is where the core of this video comes in. What I've explained to you about the Genos, I'm going to now transcribe or translate into the KETRON, where things are switched. The strength of the KETRON, and has always been the strength of the KETRON, has been on the arranger side of things when it comes to the styles. And every time KETRON have been upping the game in the style department, ever since your SD1, where they were dealing with grooves, okay, coming all the way up, and every time they're always pushing live. First, you have instruments that have live drums, then you have instruments with live drums and percussion, then you went to live guitars, as you could see in the audio series, and then with the SD90, more live guitars, more selection, and now with the event, the whole entire left section is live. But don't get fooled by this. It also does have MIDI arrangement parts. So in conjunction with the live drums, you do have your live bass, you do have your live guitars, but you also still have, if I go to the screen here, you also still have the live chords, okay? So your chord 1, chord 2, chord 3, chord 4, chord 5 are MIDI chords. So it means that you still have that flexibility, because of course when you're dealing with live, you do have limitations as to what you can and cannot do with a live track. And that's why producing a live audio track or live audio style on a KETRON could be a challenge to many people out there. And that's the reason why not many people are doing that, because it requires time in the studio. It requires a whole lot of designing and engineering. You see the video that Robert Mesny put out there, that was just the tip of the iceberg. But he did a good job explaining what it takes to produce a live style. And that's being done by most third-party style programmers. We at AJAM Sonic, we released a lot of live styles in the Pro 1 package, and a lot of people were really, really intrigued about that package because it was a package that covered a little bit of everything, especially if you're playing American Western music or Latin Caribbean music as well.
Yeah. Because it has transformed this keyboard into something very different. The brightness tone that I struggled with in the previous video, gone. It's all nice and bright. The sharpness of the drums, the previous video I explained that the drums all sounded very dark and sort of as if the drums were sort of in a different room to where you're actually playing the keyboard. He's fixed it. He's gone through and he's made lots of changes. And there's little things, little nice things that I wanted to see in the keyboard. Something like OTS, because this doesn't have any OTS buttons. But AJ has gone in and set up this thing where we can go voice to ABC, turn it on, and he's set up voices for the styles. Brilliant. What a diamond. And all these little things that I sort of reported in the previous video have been ironed out.
So this is where the strength of the KETRON would actually come into play, right? The arrangement. The movement in the arrangement now is what makes things different, because when you play a style, you're not getting the same thing over and over again. Depending on what chords you're playing, you're triggering what musicians recorded in those particular chords or in those particular keys. And because the loops are not just 8 measures, unlike the Genos, the loops or the length of the measures here, some of them are 16 and some of them are even 32. You can even go up to 64. That means that there's a lot more room within each of the variations to be able to make the style breathe and make the style talk and make the style move. And that's what gets people turned on when it comes to playing KETRON, because the KETRON, especially in the event, when you sit down and play a style, it's moving. Each time you go from a variation to a variation, you're hearing something different. And just like on the Genos aspect of it, on the KETRON, the magic is happening on the left hand when you're playing the chords or you're in full piano mode. Because each time you trigger a chord, something is happening. Either you're getting a bass slap, for an example, you're getting some other intriguing guitar parts put in, you might be getting a saxophone line that comes in somewhere. And because it's not 8 bars, it's about 16, there's movement in that style. So you as a musician are intrigued every single time that you sit down on the KETRON and just start playing the chord section, the different styles. So because of that, you don't really have that much of a demand to have a plethora of styles, because every style that you have can be used again and again and again. That's one aspect of it. Now, having said that though, there are some song-specific styles that you cannot just use a generic style to produce. There's a certain line, either in the bass line or in the guitar, that is unique to that particular song. I'll give you an example. If you're trying to play No Woman No Cry by Bob Marley, there's a certain bass line in that, you know, now of course I'm playing that with a different instrument, but that's how the bass line is, that dum 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 dum. That is unique to that song. Anywhere in the world, for the most part, if you start and just play those notes, 5 notes, 99% of the people will tell you you're going to play No Woman No Cry. Now the same can also go for a song like so, Sexual Healing by Marvin Gaye, right? Certain songs have certain hook lines where, yes, you can get by with a generic style, but people want to hear those particular associations with that particular song. And in that particular case, you're now dealing with song styles, right? A style which is developed for a particular song. And we have a couple of those as well in the KETRON library. But Yamaha has a plethora of those. So when you play a song, when you play a style, immediately when you hit the chord, you're thinking, this is this. Whitney Houston, because the style was tailored around that. So you now begin to understand why there's no such a thing as one keyboard or one arranger fits all. So in this particular example, what I'm doing right now is I'm actually using both machines simultaneously. and I'll talk about the connection at the end of this video. So I'm getting the best of both worlds. I'm being able to play styles using the KETRON, but I'm also using the Genos right-hand voices. In some cases, I can combine both. So for an example, in this case here, everything you're hearing is the Genos, okay? But now the moment I do this, let me get over here so I can show you what I'm doing. I bring up the volume of the KETRON. Now I'm hearing both of them, okay? If I want to hear just the KETRON, I just turn down the volume of the Yamaha. If I do this, that's the KETRON, the event. Now you get both of them. And you can hear the Yamaha doing its thing, right? Right? You see what I'm saying? This is where the combination, this is how both of them are getting you the ultimate sound. And that's just in the sound department, okay? Because the KETRON doesn't have a lot of articulation or to that effect as the Genos does, as the Yamaha Genos 2 does. The KETRON event, the samples, the recordings are perfect, especially when it comes to live sound. You know, you hear what it is if you were to go to a bar, right, and hear a saxophone player playing. In this instance, you hear what it is if you were to go to the studio and have that saxophone player record in the studio. That's how I can put it in a nutshell for the most part. This is your arranger. We want to hear how the band sounds like if you were to go to a bar or you want to go to a football stadium. That's the arranger sound you're going to get here. This is the arranger if you want to hear that same band, that same band recorded in a studio environment. So it's more like it's more tamed, okay? That's the layman's way of putting it. But yes, by doing that combination, you could hear exactly what I just did and what I was able to accomplish. Now, that is just simple. We're not going to spend almost $4,000 here and $5,000 here just to duplicate sounds, right? That's not going to happen. But I'm doing this example on the event because really, on the SD40, you can achieve similar results as well. If you had a Yamaha PSR 70, or sorry, PSR SX900, right? And now you got a KETRON SD40 module. It's the same thing. And I actually have a video out there as well that shows you how you can do the same thing about, get the same or similar results as well. You're trying to see how you can get the best within your limited budget. So in this other example right here, I'm going to go in here to my registration, okay, and I'm going to show you what I did in that first song, okay, Wagon Wheel. That's my setup in the KETRON for Wagon Wheel. Now on the Yamaha, it's in registration number 1. So automatically what's happening is the keyboard here is set up for the particular things I wanted to do in Wagon Wheel. The module is set up for the particular things I want it to do as far as this song is concerned. The magic is when I press a chord here, the Yamaha is going to start playing at exactly the same time as the KETRON, right? Watch this. So you see that both machines are playing, okay? Show you the screen of the Yamaha right there. So when I start playing, play something else, okay, just to give you an idea so you know it's not a backing track. I'm actually playing the chord and doing change chords, playing the chords in real time. Now, what have I done in the KETRON? Just to show you what it is, if I get out of here, in the KETRON, okay, let me just stop that so you can hear me better. If I go to view, everything is playing on the KETRON, okay? You look at my sliders here, everything is playing on the KETRON side. On the Yamaha side, if you come over here, I took out the drums, okay, and I took out the bass of that style. So these are two separate styles that are playing, but on the Yamaha, I don't want to, I prefer the bass and the drums from the KETRON, and so that's what you're hearing here. However, on the Yamaha, I prefer the pads and the phrase and some of the guitar licks that are coming out of here. So what I did was I muted some of the guitar tracks on the KETRON. I'm using the guitar tracks here, but I muted the drums and bass here, and I want that coming from the KETRON to get this result, okay? So then now, guess what? In Arranger A, I'm playing the style contents of both. I can switch to Arranger B and remain on A, go back to C, switch over here to C, come back to B. So right now, instead of having 4 variations, I actually have 4 variations, 4, that's 8 times 8. I have 64 variations, if I did my math correctly, because it depends on which combination of 2 that I want to go back and forth with. And being able to control this live, listen to this. That's just the KETRON, okay? That's solely the KETRON. Now let's bring in the Yamaha. Watch this. Now, if I do this, this is the Yamaha playing. So this is what value the Yamaha is adding to that recording. Bring in the KETRON. Again, this is where you can get very, very interesting. You see what I was doing over there? I was able to use the multi-pads that the Yamaha offers, right? So I can actually insert this into my song. So this again is some of the stuff I'm talking to you about, being able to use both arrangers, okay? And being able to make them compensate and complete each other. All right, let's go to another one right here real quick. Again, each of these, I mean, this is a very, very powerful combination. I'm going to pick this one here, registration like a bridge over troubled waters, okay? In the Yamaha, it's set in on registration number 2. So all I have to do is hit number 2. Again, the KETRON has been customized to do its thing, and the Yamaha has been customized to do its thing. I've taken off certain tracks. Now in this case, if you notice, if I come over here to the Yamaha, I go over to my side, my slider assign, you notice that on the rhythm number 2, again, I took out the rhythm number 2. But number 1, I actually have some rhythm coming in. So in Yamaha world, drum 1 is, to translate to KETRON world, drum 1 is not their main drum. The main drum is on the rhythm number 2 track, right? And rhythm number 1 is the percussion, right? But they have some beautiful percussions here for this particular rhythm. So I brought up that percussion volume, but I took out the drums again, because MIDI drums for me, and took out the bass. Now, however, in between, within the song, again, some people are going to say, that's too much for me. Remember, you can save all of this as registrations on both instruments. That way you're not figuring out what you're playing and trying to be typing back and forth. No, you can actually save these setups in the registration, so that for a particular part of the song, you want the drums here. But another part of the song, you want the drums from here. You can go back and forth. Now, if you're in the studio, that's even better because you have the time and patience to do that. But when you're playing live, you really have to rely on the strength of the registration. So let's tackle this one, like a bridge over troubled waters. Registration number 2 over there, touch that on the screen. And here, registration number 2, it's all set up. My lights are all ready to go. How is this going to sound like on the Yamaha? Well, not the Yamaha, sorry, the combination of the Yamaha Genos 2 and the KETRON Event. This is what this song sounds like. So if you notice, right, I'm picking up sounds from here, and in this case, I'm actually picking up a voice from here too, a classic flute in this particular example, because I prefer that particular sound that was coming out of the event. But I did have nice multi-pad strings coming out of the Yamaha, and of course also the nice acoustic guitar sound that the Yamaha offers. Also, the one thing I forgot to mention about the Genos 2 is, for me, again, these are my personal views after just spending a very short time with this machine, is the fact that they have done a very, very awesome job when it comes to the effects department. In other words, there's one thing to be able to capture a sound or being able to capture a sample, right, and try to reproduce it as best as possible. It's another thing to be able to have various effects types that you can use to pass that sound through to butter it up, right, to make it sound different or to make it sound better, or maybe in some cases sound worse, right? So the effect engine on the Genos is great, that I must say, right? So it allows you to do a lot of things. But again, this is not a Genos 2 video. Neither is this a KETRON event video. It's a video to talk about how you enhance, you know, if you have a KETRON and you want to get a Genos, or if you have a Genos and you want to get a KETRON, especially with the fact that KETRON remains one of the only companies in the world, I think, that are making arranger modules. So that means that, again, the modules can be used with a guitar player, with sax player, accordion. I think most of our customers out there are MIDI accordion players. But imagine having a setup like this where you have a keyboard and then you have the KETRON world brought into your Genos world. That's a very, very powerful combination indeed, you know. So again, sync start over here, sync start over there, fire it away. So again, if you notice, what I'm doing here is that I'm able to trigger this machine from this one. Let me go back to the screen so you can see what I'm talking about, right? So I don't even have to touch this. I just said I'm changing some things on here. If I go to sync start here and I make sure the key start is on here, that's the same. Again, language is a little bit different. Key start, sync start, key stop, sync stop, right? The moment I start playing the Genos, the KETRON is also fired off, because these two are actually connected via MIDI. And again, on the Yamaha, I can bring in those beautiful things to make the music sound great, okay? These are the multi-pads. That's the Yamaha right there. So what you're hearing right now is coming from the Genos 2. The KETRON now, let me show you another trick, right? This is, you can make music so beautiful. One of the good things that the Yamaha has, they call it multi-pads, right? It's other aspects of different musical phrases, which can either play by themselves, solo, which means that you have no interaction with the keyboard in terms of chord progressions, or they can be made to be played in conjunction with your chords. So you have a phrase in there, for an example. If I go to the multi-pads, I'm going to, let's see, show you the screen so you can see what I'm doing. All right, so I'm going to go to the multi-pads here, and I want to go into, this actually may put a smile on my face. Go into vocal, right? And I'm going to pick vocal chords, for an example. So you're going to hear, that's number 1, okay? Now, normally, that's in a particular key. If I change the chord here, take out the key stop for now. See, these are vocal phrases, all right? So if I come over here now, go to the slider, I want to make that stand out more. I'm going to go to the slider and I'm going to go to the multi-pad volume, which is down here. Bring that down, bring it back up a notch. I want that to stand out. So I'm going to make that louder, okay? Go back into the main control panel. Now, what we just did with that song, Like a Bridge Over Troubled Waters, I'm going to do that now, and I'm going to introduce these pads. Listen to this. Go over here to key start, sync start over here. Here we go. So just by using this alone, and there's a whole bunch of them in there, for example, right? You could even go crazy. For example, this song, right, is a 4/4, right? 4/4 timing. I can go into the multi-pad control and pick a 3/4 timing beat or guitar and just syncopate them. I mean, it's again, like I said, it makes you realize that yes, you can't really have everything in one arranger. It has to do with what are some of the things that you are looking for. Now, another thing, let me give you an example here. When it comes to Latin music, right? That's one of the areas where the KETRON, in my opinion, excels because they're using the live drums, live guitars, and live bass. So if I want to play a salsa, and I'm going to tell you why I'm doing this. That's registration number 3. Let me turn the KETRON down, all right? Let's show you the screen here. So let's hear, what does the salsa sound like on the YAMAHA Genos 2 by itself, okay? Let's hear. Oops. Let me bring in the rhythm, okay? So that is your salsa coming out of the Genos. Now I'm going to not play the Genos, so I'm just going to use that to trigger the event. Let's hear how the salsa sounds like on the event. Here we go. Again, let's come back to the Genos. So, what did I do for this particular demonstration? In this salsa mix, I'm going to do the same thing here, load that up here on the Genos. I took out the main drum here and took out the main bass on the Genos, and I want to use the live bass that's coming out of here and the live percussion that's coming out of here. And also I felt as though the piano pattern on the Genos it cuts through the mix better. So I mute the piano patterns of the style in here and use the piano pattern in here. So again, you got to go through the style and say, listen, the Genos has 10 tracks within the style. I want to use the drums. I don't want to use the drum. I don't want to use the percussion. I want to use the bass. I want to use the pad here or the phrase here. You figure out that on the Genos. Then you now have to balance that up on this other end. Together, you have a full style package, right? And even when it comes to the lead voices, there are going to be instances where I want the lead voice on the Genos. There are going to be instances where I want the lead voice on the KETRON. Oh, and by the way, there are also going to be instances where I want to use both of the voices. So this depends on sitting down and looking at the project and where you're trying to go. What do you want to achieve? And these machines together, the combination, will, trust me, it will take you there real quick. But this is what it sounds like when you have the salsa with the mix between the Genos 2 and the KETRON Event. So you see, in that particular example, again, you're blending the best of both worlds, right? You heard what the sounds that were coming out of the Genos in terms of those the brass parts, but you also heard the bass line and the percussion. These were played by actual people that are experienced in that music, and that's one of the edges or one of the strengths of the KETRON. They go to that part of the world, you know, Latin players actually sitting down there and playing the music, because it's not just about playing the music or learning how the music is played. There's something about the culture of the music, right? If I want to get the best salsa in the world, can somebody in Greece play that? Possibly. Can somebody in Russia play that? Possibly too. Can somebody in Canada play that? Yes. But your default, where would you go if you wanted to listen to salsa? Or where would you go if you wanted to get the authentic salsa music? You're looking at places like Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. That's where you would go, because it's not just about the music, it's also about the feeling of the music, right? That's where, when you play as an artist or as a musician, especially if you grew up in that part of the world, then you feel and are much more capable to replicate that music than somebody else from another part of the world. If I want to go and get somebody to play good country music, can someone from France do that? It's possible. Can someone from Morocco do that? Okay. Can someone from Southern Cameroon do it? Yeah, that's possible too. But I would not be thinking about that. I'll be thinking about someone in Texas, USA, right? Home to country music. Now, it's played in every other part of the world, but yes, if I want to play reggae, I think about Jamaica. So what KETRON did is they actually have musicians from those parts of the world, and that's why when you play something, you play a reggae mix, for example, it sounds like reggae. You play salsa, it sounds like salsa, and you get all those little intriguing things that are inside the keyboard as well. So, really speaking, that was the purpose of the video for today. Now, I said at the beginning that I was going to show you how to hook it up. So what you're doing is, imagine if you're just a musician, right? Because unfortunately today, with the way the technology is, it looks like you have to be a rocket scientist just to play music. Yeah, there's some truth to that, but we try to make it simple for you guys, right? So you have a MIDI cable on the back of a MIDI jack, MIDI port at the back of the Genos 2, MIDI out. You're going to connect that. Genos has two sets of ports, A and B. So what I did in my case, out of port A, MIDI out of the Genos into MIDI in on the KETRON. Now on the Genos, let's go to the screen so I can show you how the setting is. So once you've done that, okay, with the MIDI cable, you now go over here to menu, and then you go over to MIDI on the Genos, and you should have a screen that looks like this, okay? Now if you look at my screen, this is what I've done here. So the transmit clock is set to on, right? Because I want the Genos to send a MIDI clock out that's going to control or drive the KETRON. All right. Now, if I go to the left side and I go to transmit, if you notice here, the channel setup right, I put that on channel 1, right 2, and right 3, channel 1. So all the 3 voices that are coming out of the Genos, right 1, right 2, and right 3, I put them on the same MIDI channel because they're going to control the right voices or trigger the right voices coming out of the KETRON as well. Okay. Now, if I go to where it says lower, sorry, port 1, channel 2. So I'm using the lower on the left side to control my chords that are coming into the KETRON. I don't think I did anything there on page 2. No, that's fine. So, and I saved this here as KETRON setup, as you can see. So you can save various setups here for that. But this is what you're looking for on the transmission side of the Genos 2. Okay, so you go into system and you set up the clock. Transmission clock should be on as well. Okay, and of course clock is set to internal because you want this to drive the KETRON. So now let's go over to the KETRON side so I can share with you what the setup should be on the KETRON. Remember, on the Genos, we were sending information out. So we were concerned or more concerned about the MIDI out part of the Genos. Now, if we come over to the KETRON side, we go into menu and then we go into MIDI. We are more concerned about the MIDI coming in. So we go into edit, and this is what you would like your setup to be on the MIDI RX or MIDI receive. Remember, on the Genos, or it could be a KORG PA5X or any other arranger keyboard, the right hand voices, right 1, right 2, and right 3, we're transmitting that on channel 1. So on the KETRON, we're going to put the right there to channel 1. We're going to receive the right hand information on channel 1. On the Genos, we put the lower, in my case over here, left side on channel 2. So on the KETRON, we want the left side to receive on channel 2. And that's pretty much it for the most part. Now, one more thing before we go. On the KETRON side, if I go over here, remember in the beginning, I did talk to you about the clock, right? So there was the Genos being able to send out a MIDI clock information to drive the KETRON. That way they're on the same tempo, they're on the same time. Otherwise you have some variation in time shift and everything here. So if you go back to the KETRON, you come back in here to the MIDI and you go to utilities. And there you see MIDI clock in, right? So you want the MIDI clock to be driven by the Genos, all right? And that's it. And then you can now save that. Oops, I went out of there too quickly. You can then save this as a particular setup. You hit your save, and it's going to ask you, do you want to save that? Remember that these are presets. So they're standard, accordion, manual. These are our preset settings, right? It's like saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this has 9 presets. I can have MIDI setup in standard, a different MIDI setup here, in this case for the accordion, a different one set up here as well too. So I can have different MIDI setups in different presets. Okay, we'll have 9 of them over here. And that's really what you do. So once you've done that now, both machines are pretty much in communication and they are talking to one another. Again, don't forget the MIDI cable, MIDI out of your Genos or your KORG and MIDI in into the KETRON. So again, this was just an example to show you how you can enhance, in this particular case, your Genos too, or how you can enhance your KETRON event if you want to do it the other way around, or how you could enhance a KORG or Roland or any other arranger keyboard that's out there. That's why the saying that there's one size, one shoe fit all, not in music. You know, as musicians, we're always looking for creativity. We're always looking for how to make the music move. And that's why sometimes you find yourself, every time a new keyboard comes out, you want to go purchase that. What's that drive to do that? Yes, it's also features and technology, yes. But the number one thing is, how does the music move you, right? And that's also the downside of arranger keyboards, because after a while you get into this spiral. It's monotonous. It sounds like it's boring because you've heard the same styles over and over again, or the same sounds over and over again. Again, the Genos' strength is going to be that that's not necessarily true for the lead voices, because each time you're playing, you're not playing the same way all the time. And so it's picking up on those little things and doing something to make the music move, whether it's putting a guitar bend or a sax bend, or it's doing like a modulation up, going up from one to another, or bending down, or adding brass sections that we have on the KETRON side. On the KETRON right now, for example, the growl brass, is a sound where you hold it down for a couple of seconds and the sound builds up. That's a very nice sound called growl brass coming from the KETRON end, right? So the right hand or lead voices on the Genos makes you want to really play that board in terms of playability. The arranger side on the KETRON makes you want to sit there for hours and just go through the styles and just hit those chords. When you combine them both, you might find yourself not eating for 3, 4, 5 hours and just sitting in the office or sitting on the stage or sitting in your basement somewhere in your studio and just playing for hours and hours, because every time you're playing something, it's like you're playing with a live band. That's the thing about human beings. And this, for me, in my opinion, I know that there's software out there that is trying to, emulate or copy or make do or try to, that's fine if you're into software. The unique thing about the hardware gear is just the ease of access and the durability of that gear on the road. For me personally, yes, it's okay to use an iPad or a laptop or a computer for your gig, but when I have a keyboard, when I have a module, and I can jump in there and control these things in real time, that means that my music can really, really breathe. And not only that, don't just rely on the keyboard. Also look at your playing technique and your playing skills. And please, please look at your manuals and try to understand what it is that these things can do, first of all, because you'll be surprised at some of the little intriguing things. Again, I'd like to say a special thanks to Frank at Audio Pro Connecticut for having us have a Genos 2 for a couple of days. This was really a very, very awesome thing for us here. Also like to say thanks to KETRON, for being KETRON, of course, and having that ideology of being able to create a live workstation or a live arranger keyboard that has these capabilities. I know there's Roland out there. I know there's also KORG. I've had some time on the KORG as well too. Each of these have something that they bring to the table. The question you have to ask yourself is, which meal do you want to be served, and how do you want to ingest that meal? Again, this is AJ, arranger keyboard player, engineer, software engineer as well, and I'm saying to you, have a blessed day for all of you that are out there. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe to the channel, because we're going to be bringing you more overall arranger tricks and tips that you can be able to use when you are talking about performing on arranger keyboards. Okay, so in that note, I'm going to say ciao for today, and if you have any questions, just put them in the comment as well, and we'll be glad to answer them as well. As this is again was supposed to be a quick video, but it was a lot more talking because of trying to explain how these things do, rather than just trying to play and people ask you, how do you do that? Is that possible? Can I do that? Yes, you can. Can I do that? If I can do it, you can do it too. With just a phone call or text away. Take care now. AJ out.